righty. Hello, welcome to the April 2023 Symbl community meeting. My name's David, and we're going to go over the agenda today here. If you feel inclined, you can add yourself to the attendee list here. I will drop the link to this into the chat, so you can go ahead and do that if you're interested. Yeah, we'll just go over some announcements, and then we'll go into today's topic, which we'll talk about OpenAI and ChatGPT. I think we'll have a cool demo, and there's actually a cool repo with a library that has been published as of this morning, and I cut a release of it. It's just kind of an experiment because it's kind of interesting to support the demo and like the topic today. So some announcements today. We have, just as a reminder, that the meetings are recorded public, and feel free to, if you want to just be a lurker, it's cool to just hang out, take a listen. And if you have any questions, definitely the meeting's for you. Feel free to ask whatever questions you want, interrupt me and all that fun stuff. And this is kind of designed to be a conversation, right? So you can find the recordings here and the slides also here for last month's meeting. And yeah, feel free to send them out, share them, whatever. They're all public. And then just as a reminder, we have our community repo, which I actually do need to update, but it has our governance and our code of conduct. Just the kind of the upshot of that is, just be cool to everyone. This is, be nice. And this is a forum for everyone to learn, exchange ideas, and all that fun stuff. Also in that community repo, which is what I said I need to update, we have 2 new training videos that are available. So we actually have a video for transcription, which you can go ahead and click there. It'll open up on YouTube. Great stuff. It goes into the videos are designed to be like, the first half is like informational, kind of like good for developer, product, marketing type people. And then like the second half goes into actual code and different APIs, SDKs, and all that fun stuff. And then there's a second video for redaction, same format, informational up front. And then the second half is effectively code SDKs, examples. There's links to repos and links to code, so you can like reproduce the demos that are all done in the videos. So it's pretty cool stuff. So I need to update the community repo to link out to all that stuff. And then also next up in the series, where I'm going to have...
David,
Yeah.
sorry to interrupt you, but
Go
what do you
for it.
mean by redaction? What do you mean by redaction? Matlab, I didn't get it.
Yeah,
I
so
got
yeah, the Symbl platform has a feature that does redaction. So you can, if there's any sensitive information for like HIPAA related stuff, or, like credit card payment processing, you can enable redaction. So like if someone, gives like their social security number, you can redact that out of the transcription that you can get from. So basically you apply redaction on top of the transcription APIs that we have. So yeah, there's a whole section about like how you enable it, like why we have redaction, like what industries it's good for. And then it goes into that video will go into the APIs of like how to actually enable it, and like how to exclude certain things. Maybe there's some things you want to say, like a location, like like I live in Long Beach. You might want that to be allowed to go through, or you might want that to be redacted. So goes into all of those APIs that we have available to do that. So it's all contained in that video.
Okay, got it. Thanks.
Yep, cool. And then so yeah, for next week, the next couple of videos that I'm going to crank out soon are for topics, and then also another video for questions, follow-ups, and action items. And it'll have that same exact format, like informational for like the first half, and then dive into code examples and link out to repos so you can reproduce everything. And then we don't have any action items from last month's meeting, so we can skip over that. And I'm going to fast forward to the end kind of here. If you are interested in talking about any other topics, questions, anything like that, feel free to add them to the agenda here. We'll go over that at the end of the presentation for ChatGPT yeah, you can just add it right here, and yeah, we'll definitely cover it, and then I'll take any notes for next month's meeting. Having said that, I'll pause. Anyone have any questions, or just going over like logistical fun, actually logistical non-fun stuff usually. So cool, excellent. And then yeah, so I guess let's just go ahead and talk about, let's see, I might actually have to share. Can everyone see that? Hopefully, maybe, kind of.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's visible.
All right, cool. So yeah, like we talked about today, kind of gone over, we're going to talk about Symbl, the platform, and then ChatGPT and how we can like kind of have a cool integration. Oops, there we go. So yeah, the agenda today, we're just going to do a review of ChatGPT, like kind of go over background, some actually little architecture, some pros and cons of ChatGPT, like why it's interesting, why it's kind of getting all this, all this hype and all this interest. And then we're going to go over the actual APIs and SDKs, highlight some that are kind of like really interesting, that in my opinion, that are really interesting, and like why, like the things that you probably are going to be interested in if you're going to build applications around that. And we're going to go over an SDK, and specifically, although they have many, many SDKs, we're going to go over the Go SDK because it's pretty powerful. And then we're going to cover like how you can like marry our two platforms together. So how we can take the Symbl platform and then the ChatGPT platform and take their APIs and our APIs and like kind of build some cool things. And I'm actually going to have demo, and there's going to be code. So we're going to go look at that. Like I said, because this is public meeting, there's no private stuff. All the code that we have available it's out there on GitHub. I'll link to all of that stuff at the end, and then we'll just open up for Q&A and all that fun stuff. So that's the agenda. Oh, okay. So a review of ChatGPT. So just as a background for ChatGPT, everyone kind of has a basic idea of what it is. ChatGPT is a chatbot platform. They also have obviously APIs and SDKs. GPT actually just refers to the generative pre-trained transformers. It's a family of large language models. So GPT models are effectively artificial neural networks, and they're based on that transformer architecture. I've kind of linked out here, so the slides will be available afterwards. You can click the link, get more information about it. But effectively, the way ChatGPT and this artificial network works is it's pre-trained on large data sets of unlabeled text and data. So you can actually see some of the statistics here. It's 750 gigabytes of plain text, 4.4 trillion tokens. A lot of the information in the text they've crawled is mostly just stuff that's available out on the internet, in quotes. Wikipedia, there's a bunch of quotes. Wikipedia, there's a bunch of like databases for like books and stuff like that. So it's all out there. It's all unstructured information, text that they consume in, and that's how they build their neural network. So there's that. And then so some of the basics of like the architecture, like I'm going very high level because I don't want to get into the super nitty details on it. But I've linked out to all of this, so you can like, if you are super interested in the details, I'm going to kind of keep it high level and then even kind of summarize it to make it easier to consume for people who might not be familiar with AI and machine learning. But going over some of the architectural and operational stuff. ChatGPT is quite interesting because they use reinforcement learning with human feedback. So believe it or not, there's actually for certain aspects of the way that they train their models, there's actually humans involved that are saying this is good and this is bad. And this actually has, implications in like how things are processed. The techniques that they use to train it's kind of like a reward model. Like I said, with human feedback, the reward function is basically like you say that this data is good, this data gets included in the model, and you effectively get like anything that's kind of tangentially related to this new feedback, it gets included in the model so that like if you're going to do something like I don't know, match topics or whatever, it takes that feedback so that you get better results or better output at the end. So these reward models that are used to fine tune the model to get like better results or better output. ChatGPT or OpenAI created effectively something, I think it was like 2017 or 2018-ish. They created something called a proximal policy optimization model. And this is a kind of, it's weird. It's like a model-free model of reinforcement learning. And the way it works is I'm trying to remember here. It's an algorithm kind of where it's by trial and error. So effectively, the the neural network in the back end is going to try certain things, and if it gets a good output, it's included into the model. And if it like this is like it negatively affecting the results or the results of like what you're trying to get at, then that it's excluded from the model. And so that's how they kind of refine their model so that they get better results and better feedback. And so kind of like an opposing thing on like how a lot of neural networks work is they have something called trust region policy optimization algorithms. So that's quite interesting in how it works. You'll probably, if you want, you can click the link and get more details about this. Effectively, the trust region policy optimization works in such a way that you have a whole bunch of data, and I'm very explaining this kind of very high level. So like technically it's not going to get into the details, but effectively you have a bunch of data that's like very close to like what you're looking for. And if that data is close enough to like the percent close enough to the result of what you're trying to get at, it is included into the model so that it can, hopefully refine and give you better output. The negatives of the trust region policy optimization model is the reason why it's like OpenAI didn't use that for ChatGPT is that it's very, very CPU intensive. And so the proximal policy optimization model is something that they used in order to try to reduce the CPU requirements and the amount of processing on the back end in order to like get results. Although I've come to learn, and there's articles that have been popping out recently that yes, it is better, but they're still using it's like still a quadratic performance in terms of like how they're crunching data and stuff like that, which is quite interesting. I didn't include this in the slides, but yeah, that's kind of like how on the back end, how everything works. Effectively, they actually still have humans involved that are like blessing like certain behaviors, and things that are excluded or like explicitly excluded by people. There's obviously some things where it gets included automatically, but I think there's kind of the takeaway is that there's still people involved in all this fun stuff. I'm sure that they're going to make changes and refinements, but as of a few weeks ago or months ago ish, that's still the kind of the behavior and like how it works. So I'm going to pause right there if anyone has any questions or anything like that. Okay, cool. All right. So I want to go into the strengths and the weaknesses, like the pros and cons of like ChatGPT. And why I'm going to call this out is because it's actually relevant on like if you're going to build applications that are going to consume ChatGPT, you got to like keep these things in mind. And so like some of the strengths that OpenAI and ChatGPT, like what they have is you can define the operational parameters for your queries and your conversations. It's kind of actually pretty cool, and we're going to have that in the demo. Effectively, what you'll see, what you'll hear out there in ChatGPT land is it's the prompt, right? Everyone's like super interested in like what prompt do you start with to kind of like refine or get unique or accurate results or output for your query. And so that's what I mean by like operational parameters. And it's really actually kind of cool because not only can you give the prompt, like initial input, but you can actually continue to refine, your input with additional operational parameters further down in the conversation. And that leads into the second bullet point, which is ChatGPT remembers your previous prompts, conversations, exchanges when you're trying to refine or hone down your output for your conversation. And another strength is that they have APIs that are available and also SDKs. I probably should have included that in there. They actually have a pretty large number of SDKs that are both supported out there in the community and ones that they've published themselves. And if you have seen the news more recently, that they actually have published a plugin interface. So you don't need to, it's actually kind of really cool. You don't need to go down into code to actually, generate like your conversation or your integration using actual code like Golang or Python. But they actually have a plugin interface where you descriptively in whatever language, you're like English, like whatever, like natural human language you want to express your conversation or what your plugin wants to do, like what the input and your output is. It's all done using natural language, which is actually pretty interesting. And yes, that's kind of like some of their APIs, the way you can access the platform. And then obviously the last one is hype, and I'm not saying that as a bad thing. It's actually really good. It's, bringing awareness to like the community, to whether it's AI, machine learning, like what chatbots and the capabilities of the platform are. I think, they've done pretty cool and interesting things, OpenAI and ChatGPT. To be honest, I use it to like say like, hey, like I created this blog post, like make a tweet for me. I mean, it's actually kind of cool. And I have the paid thing for it, like full disclosure. I threw a credit card down because, well, one, you need it in order to access the APIs. But yeah, it's actually kind of cool. So those are the strengths. I'll pause right there if anyone has any questions, or maybe if you have any other strengths or things that are interesting that anyone else wants to interject or throw in there. No? All right. So, let's cover some of the weaknesses. So, one of the things, there's kind of a bunch of limitations that ChatGPT and OpenAI has, their platform. One, like everyone I think is pretty familiar with, is that the amount of data that they're providing, it all stops, well, as of writing this, was September 2021. So any data that is after that, so like stuff on the internet after September 2021 is not included into the model and in the response. So that's why when you ask it more current relevant events or like, data points or like, can you tell me anything that's happened after this date? Like ChatGPT won't know about it. And I'm sure that's probably been updated. But the reason why they don't update it frequently is because the amount of processing that it takes to generate like the model, it takes a long time to do it in a bunch of CPU. So to generate that, the new model and the new network for, this new set of data that gets included, it takes a long amount of time, which probably costs them a lot of money to do. I heard it was on maybe in the order of $1 million-ish plus the amount of CPU and stuff like that it requires to actually do that. So it takes a lot of CPU, and that's the reason why they're not like taking data every day and like, ingesting it and making new refinements to their model. So one thing that maybe people aren't aware of, that ChatGPT can actually hallucinate. And what I mean by hallucinate, it's effectively creating plausible sounding but incorrect, nonsensical answers. I kind of call them, like, maybe you've heard in the past, I'm jokingly calling them alternative facts. I've actually linked out to this phenomenon. It's pretty well known. I think one of the links is actually the CEO talking about it. It's a real thing. So just be aware that just because this thing spits out an answer doesn't mean it's correct. And so, yeah, just be aware of that. It's actually kind of cool. It's kind of actually, if you think about it, it's kind of potentially how a person might actually behave, because maybe, you have your own bubble that you live in and you give an answer based on what your bubble is. So it's kind of interesting that kind of ChatGPT actually kind of follows that behavior. So another weakness is that there's no privacy. So just be aware that anything you provide ChatGPT to say like, hey, I'm trying to solve this problem, that information can be now used as data points. So if you say, like, the thing you don't want to do is say, I'm working on this proprietary trade secret patentable thing that's not yet there or disclosed. I need you to help me with this problem. So just be aware that that information could now be used as it could be, you can get into weird situations is what I'm saying. And so there's actually a link there where quoting out to a link for an article on Samsung where employees had done that, and they leaked some potentially patentable trade secret kind of stuff, and it's now potentially being used in terms of like refining other people that are asking questions in relation to that. So it actually gets really interesting on like who owns the data, which is my next point, is anything you provide in there into ChatGPT or OpenAI, they own the data and the queries at that point, right? You're like effectively handing over information to them. And so you almost have to assume that like the amount of information that you're providing is they could potentially own, and include in their models so that they can refine their own results and their own output for people who are asking similar questions. And that kind of brings me to my last point, which is automation is great. I think a lot, like at my previous company, like one of the things I worked on was like automation. But I think in this case, until there's a way to like audit responses and find out how you get to certain conclusions and the data that supports the answer that it provides, I think you need to continue to have humans involved and leave them as kind of like the ultimate gatekeepers of, do I want to publish this? Do I want to say something about this? Instead of just like letting ChatGPT like kind of have free reign and just reply to your customers, right? I think that could be potentially very, very bad. And we've seen examples of that kind of already. I haven't linked out here, but initially when Microsoft and Bing used ChatGPT to like refine their search results. You can go ahead and Google this. I'm not going to go into it, but was some pretty interesting interactions with ChatGPT trying to like coerce and like lead people to do like have weird conversations based on like even just something as simple as chat results. So just throwing it out there that you probably don't want it to go that far in that direction. So effectively, always have a human involved would be my opinion. So I'll pause right there if anyone has any questions. All righty. If not, then we'll talk about quickly some APIs and SDKs for OpenAI. So I think these ones are so I have the link to the API reference at the top there, and I've included like three, which I think are like the three probably main APIs that you probably would be interested in if you're trying to build like an integration with OpenAI and ChatGPT. The first one is just models. This effectively, you can get models, which lists out all of the models that they have generated. So you can find the default one as an example is the GPT 3.5 Turbo, which is the lowest cost model. So if you're going to like query results, that is the fastest and lowest cost model that they provide or recommended that they provide. You can use other models that have more data included, but because there's more data included, it might require more money in order to run those queries. And it might also take longer too in order to get the results for those queries. So you can list all the models and you can go on their API spec in order to find out like what the behavior is. And I think they even have like a link out to like cost per token, so they can go over cost and stuff like that. The second one is the chat, which is the main, obviously the main API call. So the chat completions is effectively the API call you use in order to build a chat bot or like ask questions, refine the questions, and in order to get to whatever output or desired end goal or final state is. So that's your main one, and we're actually going to go look at some code in the demo and kind of like show you like what that looks like. And then the last one, which I'm not going to cover in the demo or code, it's fine tunes. So this allows you the ability to kind of like augment their model with models that you like, with data for a model that you can like effectively kind of like marry the two in order to get like more refined results. You can like create, list, retrieve, and then obviously delete your specialization in there. So yeah, those are the kind of like the three main APIs that you probably are going to be interested in. There's obviously a lot more. There's APIs to like generate images. There's APIs to do like other things, but I think these are the three main ones that are kind of like really interesting that I think most people would be, interested in building an integration around. Maybe the image one, but I didn't include it. Oops. So yeah, kind of like I said, that middle one, or the chat, like how you actually use the API for chat, it's pretty simple, but also slightly confusing. So the basic chat request is you provide a model. And like I said, the GPT 3.5 Turbo is the recommended, and it's also the default. And then you have basically a list of messages. So this is effectively your running conversation with ChatGPT, right? And each message has a role, system, user, or assistant. The system role is effectively your prompt, like what you want your conversation, like how you want to refine or hone in on your result. The user is you, like your question or your input or your data that you're providing. And then the last role is the assistant, which is OpenAI or ChatGPT's result, their response to like whatever it is you're trying to do. And the content is like if it's a user role or user message, then it's like a question like, hey, how are you doing today? If it's a system one, like it's like instead of, I want more empirical results. I don't want like opinion based results. And then like the assistant would be like assistant message would be like the result of it, like I'm doing fine today, right? So it's like that. And you'll get that result in, so the request is like effectively like the input, and then the output to the API is the response. And it's kind of interesting, you'll get choices, and so you'll actually get more than one result back, and you can change that so you can only get one, or you can change it so you can get like 2, 3, 4. And you can then, based on like the results of what you get, you can choose like which one you want to use. And what I mean choose, but so you'll display whatever result you want, however you want to use it, but you can choose a result so that when you ask your next question or do your next refinement, you use that as like additional input in your conversation, right? So like it's effectively saying, what I'm trying to say is like, your conversation is not like isolated. You're when you're having a conversation with ChatGPT, you're building on, building blocks to like your next question or your next thing. So when you make a choice of like what you want to use for ChatGPT's response to build off of, that's what you're choosing. So I'm going to stop there because that can kind of get a little weird and confusing. And anyone have any questions about that? How am I doing on time? Okay, doing good. Got 17-ish minutes. All right. So let's get to, hopefully I think is the cool and interesting stuff. Like there's a lot of information there. So how can we marry Symbl and OpenAI and ChatGPT? So in the repo that I have published with some code and examples, so the reason why I built what I built. So the design considerations for like what I built was you assume that there is no privacy. So don't send confidential information or trade secret information to OpenAI. So don't send that information with, using their APIs. And you have to assume that anything you do send them will become a data point in your, in their models. So effectively, it's very interesting. It's the information and the data and even the conversations that you have using that, like that chat completion API, that information, like, yes, they do give you a result, but that information only kind of flows one way. And what I mean by one way is it's actually very interesting. They don't have an API to say, give me my previous conversations. You have it in the UI, but you don't have it in the API. And so it's very interesting, like why that is. So there's no way to go back to your API programmatically to go back to your past conversations and say, remember that thing I talked about with you like a month ago? There's no way to do that. So it's very interesting. So if there's no way to do that, that means kind of, which is my third bullet point, record your interactions. And it's kind of like on yourself to do that. And so that's a very big interesting design consideration when you're building your stuff or your integration with ChatGPT. And then just keep in mind, right, that there's no way to audit the responses or the data that ChatGPT provides, which is kind of, in my opinion, you need a human in order to say whether I should regurgitate what ChatGPT has given me to my end user, or maybe I need to filter it or do something else with it, or even just ignore it, right? So that there's no way to audit like how the detail or the audit trail to get to that response. And then the other very interesting thing is, if anyone who's played around with ChatGPT and their APIs, there is a small delay. And by small delay, I mean there's a delay, and you're going to see that in the demo. So when you think you're going to do like super, super real-time stuff, I mean, yes, it's going to be real-time as in we can do real-time things, but there's going to be a delay, and it's going to be interesting to see how that's going to impact applications and integrations that people are going to create. So I created this project. It's called ChatGPT GPZ. It's like kind of like the play on, easy peasy lemon squeezy. But effectively, the project has two main things. One is there's actually code in there to proxy all, and I literally mean all of OpenAI's and ChatGPT's API calls. When what I mean by that is you connect into this local proxy, and that, like just like how from the proxy normally works, you connect into your local proxy, and then that proxy forwards the requests off to ChatGPT or OpenAI. You get the result back, and through the proxy, you get the result. And the reason why that is done is because you now have the ability to like record the request and record the response. So you can make your own, effectively your own database for your conversations with OpenAI. So that's the reason why I created this proxy. And then the other part is, right, you kind of like have the server, and now you have the client. So I created several clients that are kind of very, very prescribed ways, but I think they're easy to use interfaces to interact with ChatGPT. So cool, the link is there. It's public. I cut the release before the meeting. Take a look at it. And actually, for our demo, that's what actually we're going to take a look at. So the integration that I have with Symbl is that, which you can see the example right there, and we're actually going to run it. So this proof of concept thing, we're going to use Symbl real-time streaming capabilities. We're going to run the demo on my laptop. We're going to use the microphone. I'm going to talk into it, say a few words. And what we're going to do is, based on the insights that Symbl can like pull out of a conversation, we're going to do different things. So when Symbl, the platform, sees a question in our conversation, or like when I'm speaking, I've made it so that the integration with ChatGPT is effectively answer the question, but give me 3 different answers to that possible question and provide detail and proof that you know that this answer is like kind of a good answer, right? And then for topics, trackers, and entities, so maybe just a review of a topic, kind of everyone kind of knows what a topic is. A topic is like, you talk about, it's a recurring theme in the conversation. So, if like we're talking about travel and, we're talking about like, hey, taking a trip, that kind of thing. So that is like a topic, like travel, right? A tracker is kind of very similar to a topic, except for a tracker is a topic that you're interested in and you want to get notified of when someone kind of states information or conversation, sentences, words around that particular topic. So it's like something that you want to track. And an entity is, person, place, or thing, usually. There's obviously other things. So if I say dog, or if I say like Long Beach, California, those are entities, right? And so in the demo, when I'm going to speak, we're going to key off of topics and entities. And when that is encountered, I've instructed ChatGPT to basically give me 2 general facts about the topic or entity, and then 2 obscure facts about that topic or entity. And then we're all going to be doing this through that proxy service that I've created. And the reason why is we can dump the request and the response to the console. That's not really useful in the real world, but there's an interface where you implement to, instead of dumping the request, maybe you can do something different, like store the request and the response into a database. And so that's the purpose for this proxy and that interface. So yeah, without any further ado, let's go ahead and do the demo. I might have to share my entire screen. Yeah, let's go ahead and do that. Oops. New share, I swear. Cool. Alrighty. Can everyone see my desktop? Yeah.
Yeah, it's visible.
Okay, cool, perfect. So here I got a console, right? Here I've obviously done a git clone, github.com, devon and ChatGPT. This is and then the command bin is where the proxy code lives. So we're going to actually start this proxy service. It's a very simple command.go file. So run go run command.go. And so when you see this, this starts the proxy service. So this is the thing that we're going to communicate with that sits in between the client and ChatGPT, the API endpoint. And so when it first starts up, you can see, so we can actually see this so that it's not wrapping like crazy. Well, hopefully everyone can still see that. So these are the API calls, which is all of them, except for the deprecated ones that we're listening for, and we're going to forward on to ChatGPT. And so we're going to connect to this proxy and get all of our results from ChatGPT that way. So we're going to run a program, which is simple. It's literally called the simple program. It's under example, simple. It's just a Go file. We actually take a look at the code, which is right here. It's pretty simple to use this library. You need to init logging, which is right here. And then you need to create a client, which is right here. Then you need to, I kind of made pre-baked in prompts to begin with. The skill generic, which is basically says, I want you to be a useful assistant. You would normally specify the model here. There isn't one because it defaults then automatically to the ChatGPT 3.5 /turbo, which is the cheap, fast one. And then we're going to ask our prompt, or our question is going to be, tell me about Long Beach, California. And then we're going to query it. And then we're going to obviously spit out the results. So we're just going to go ahead and run that right now. Oops. So you can't see the timing on this, but you'll see the timing on in the real time. But notice that there's that delay, and it's pretty significant. So the question is, tell me about chat, or the prompt is, tell me about Long Beach, California. And then this is the result that you get from ChatGPT. Long Beach is a coastal city in Los Angeles, California, blah, blah, blah. So this is the result that you get out of ChatGPT. So the reason why I'm showing you a very simple example, it's actually not because of the simple example. It's actually for the client, or I mean, sorry, the proxy side. So in making the query, like I said, we're going through the proxy, we're calling create chat completion. You can actually see, like I said, the prompt that I gave it initially, which is kind of hidden inside this client that I've, this client library that I've created, which is, I said, you are a useful assistant. And then the next message is, tell me about Long Beach, California. This is the input that I provided when I made this API, the chat completion API call. And then this is the response from it. And so the response was blah, blah, blah. You have all the detail here, but then this is the final response that I plopped out into the console. So like, again, why is this important? Why am I showing you this? This is your ability to save and archive your conversations with ChatGPT, because there is no get function to get conversations currently. I hope they would announce it and do it today, but there isn't. So this is your means of like persisting this into a database. Pause there for questions. Anyone have any questions? Cool. The next one we're going to do is we're going to do something slightly more complex. So there's one called cumulative. So it's under examples cumulative, if I can speak. If you go there and you look, it's a slightly more complex example. You can see create the cumulative chat client. So this is the library that I'm providing in this repo. We're going to ask it, how are you doing? Tell me about Long Beach, California, which is the next question. So, and I'm going to use the add directive. So this is that system prompt. So this is a way to refine your data, like, or refine the output you want from ChatGPT. So you say, I want more factual data is what I'm going to instruct it to do. And then the next question or the next prompt to ChatGPT is, now tell me about Long Beach, California. So it's basically, tell me about it generically. I actually want more factual type detail. Now tell me about Long Beach, California again. So we're going to run this. So again, note, like, this is a pretty simple application. Like, note how the timing takes for this stuff. So here we have, hello, how are you doing? It's giving you kind of like the generic, I'm an AI language model, blah, blah, blah. Then the next question is, tell me about Long Beach, California, which is right here. And we're still waiting on that, which is like, right, super interesting. I might actually have to cut this off because so tell me about Long Beach, California. So here's the response that ChatGPT has given me. So it's basically, right, give me coastal city in Southern California. Then the next thing we've instructed ChatGPT to do is like, hey, I actually want more factual data. Don't give me like generic like opinions that you've seen out on the internet. And this is the response, right? So I said, hey, give me more factual data. And this is the response. So a coastal city in Southern California, it's approximately 25 square miles, blah, 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 population of this. So this is like the refinement of the conversation that you're having with ChatGPT. So pretty cool. But let's get into something really cool, I think. So let's go into the Symbl integration with ChatGPT. And as we were running those APIs, you can actually still see, like, right, we're going through this proxy, so you can actually see your input and your output to OpenAI. So you can actually see all that here, right? So now let's do something cool, right? Which was, I kind of in the slides, we're going to open a microphone, connect to the Symbl platform. We're going to listen for entities, questions, and all that fun stuff. And then like I said, for questions, I'm going to have ChatGPT answer. And for entities and topics, I'm going to have ChatGPT give me information about those things, right? So let's go ahead and do that right now. Do you know anything about dogs? Oh, maybe I didn't even have time to start. Oop. I love Long Beach, California. What kind of things does your dog do at the beach? Okay, I'm stopping it here. And so, pretty interesting things, right? So, the first thing I asked was, do you know anything about dogs? And like what we've prompted ChatGPT to say is right here is someone is asking something about this question, come up with answers. So this is like literally the prompt that I'm providing ChatGPT, and this is its results, right? Saying, I know quite a bit about dogs. Did you know that they're over blah, blah, blah? And so this is why this is relevant, is because if you're building out an integration and someone asks a question, so Symbl's recognizing that, hey, someone has asked a question. Symbl, the platform, is going to extract that question, and we're going to use ChatGPT to answer the question potentially. And how this might be useful is like if you're doing like a sales call or call center kind of stuff, and someone asks a question, and maybe there's that like I don't really know the answer to, you can use maybe ChatGPT to augment like what the tech support person or the salesperson can say in a conversation that they're having with your customer, right? Then the next thing I said is, I love Long Beach, California. And so like the Symbl platform, right, is listening to the conversation, it's transcribing it. It recognizes that Long Beach, California is an entity. And so the prompt that I sent to ChatGPT was, someone mentioned Long Beach, California in this conversation I'm having, come up with 2 general facts and 2 obscure facts about Long Beach. And so this is the output that it's provided, right? Here's the general ones. It's like in Southern California, 7th largest city in the state. And then the obscure facts, like, yes, we have the Queen Mary. It's an ocean liner that's sitting off the port over here. And because I mentioned the word beach, it's a topic. Notice the reason why there was a huge delay. It's not because of the Symbl platform. It's, if we're going back to that Symbl example, anytime we're prompting OpenAI's API or ChatGPT, we're hitting their API, and that delay for every topic or every thing that we're sending to ChatGPT, there's a pretty significant delay. So keep that in mind when you're building your integration. So when it came up with it, when Symbl recognized the topic of beach, this is the thing that it brought up, like ChatGPT answered about beach, and then topic California, right? So this is the things that facts about topics, or about the topic of California. The next thing was, I asked, what kind of things does your dog do at the beach? And which is kind of cool, right? What kinds of things does your dog do at the beach? A possible answer to that question is, my dog loves to swim, fetch sticks at the beach, right? So these are answers that you could potentially use for, obviously you're not going to ask in a sales call, like, what's your dog doing at the beach? But if someone asks, like, how is deduplication relevant to my storage system? ChatGPT can go out and grab all that information, prompt your salesperson to do, or like with possible answers. And maybe that's not the answer. You don't want to use any of the answers, or maybe you do, maybe you can just read it verbatim. Your salesperson can read it verbatim to your customer, or maybe even if it's not really something you can like regurgitate to your customer in a sales meeting, maybe it's something that might get the juices flowing for your salesperson to come up with the answer that is like more relevant to your conversation that you're having. So yeah, I think this is a pretty cool thing. Like it's marrying Symbl and how Symbl understands language like really well, unstructured language, how it can pull out in transcription and messages and conversations, questions, topics, entities, and all that fun stuff, and how you can marry that with like ChatGPT to do kind of really cool and interesting things. So yeah, that's kind of my demo there. And obviously, like I said, resources you can find here. I know we're going a little long. Sorry about this. Documentation, you can find the code for the Symbl Go SDK, the ChatGPT repo, OpenAI's API, OpenAI's Go SDK. There's links in the slides. And then leave it at questions. Anyone have questions, feedback, or anything like this about the topic today, or like what you guys seen, guys or girls, peoples, humans?
Yeah, I
Yeah,
have a
David.
question.
So, yeah, go on. I'll ask after that.
My question is about the language. Is Go the only language to work
No,
with?
definitely not. I've just chosen it because like it's for me, it's really easy to build Go
Okay.
applications. Like Symbl and obviously OpenAI. We have many different languages that are like SDKs that are available. So like Symbl, you can use like JavaScript, you can use there's a C# one that's kind of floating out there, but the main ones like are JavaScript. So if you're going to do like Node.js, JavaScript, there's also Java. There's also Python, which is like something that AI and ML people really love because that's like a lot of the foundational stuff is in that, and then obviously Go, right? So there's many SDKs on both sides, Symbl and ChatGPT, OpenAI. Yep.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Any other questions?
Yeah, I wanted to ask one thing. So, can we reduce the time delay between? So, suppose uh, I'm on a sales call and um my lead wants to get some answers, but I don't have the answer. So, the time delay would be too much in the real time, no?
Yeah, so that's the very interesting thing. So the answer to your question is yes and no. So in the streaming microphone example, so the last one where I was speaking into the microphone, there are things you can do to reduce the time. In the demo, I've serialized all of the calls. So when I said something like Long Beach, which is, it triggered off beach and it triggered off California. I processed that, like those entities that Symbl, the platform, recognizes. I processed that serially. So after I processed beach, I processed California, then I processed like dog, then I processed the question. To make the optimization for that would be like do all of that in parallel, right? Symbl's throwing actually really, really quickly. The Symbl platform is throwing, here's the entities, here's the topics, here's trackers, here's questions. It's throwing that really, really fast. What's slowing everything down is ChatGPT and OpenAI's API. So the optimization you can do is do everything serially, or in parallel, and not do it serially. So that's the one optimization, which is huge, right? That you can do. I maybe probably for the next version of the repo or the demo, I can build that out so that it's more like a worker or thread model kind of a deal with Go routines. But that's one way. But even in the simple example, if you go back to the simple example and run it, which is basically tell me about Long Beach, California, you notice the delay. Now that delay for the response, you cannot do anything about. And I'm already using their turbo model, which is their slimmest, fastest model. You can go back and use older versions of models, which have less data behind it and, less, information in their model. But then you're getting potentially less information and less refined results, if that makes any sense, right?
Yeah, got it.
Yeah, but so if you want to know what the question answer just from ChatGPT is, go back to that simple example, ask it one question, and you notice that that turnaround time is actually pretty significant. So that's why I called it out in the cons. It's real time, yes. Real time enough? I don't know, right? You know, it might give you the answer or information in the time that you need. Maybe you might have to like stall or delay, but like I said, run things in parallel, but there's nothing you can do to solve the overall time for question answer just going through one API call. Yeah.
No. I had one more question. So, can this model remember context? Like, suppose I said something earlier in the conversation, but the question is generic one afterwards. So,
Yeah.
does it?
Yes,
Yeah.
most definitely. So that's where like really the strength of OpenAI and the API is. So if you go back to this cumulative example, this is literally the cumulative like conversation. And I created this client as a means of making it kind of easier to understand. If you use the the OpenAI Go SDK directly, I thought it was kind of confusing, to be honest. And what you do is you have to keep track of what you are asking, what the response is. Then you get the next question and then the response. So you need to keep track of that conversation. And when you make the API call again, you literally are taking the accumulated questions and responses that you're having with ChatGPT, and you're providing that entire conversation to them and then getting the reply back. So when I built this client, I'm doing this client is doing the record keeping for you, and it's hiding all of that. And that's the reason why I'm calling this like an opinionated client. So when we go here and we say, query, how are you doing? And then my next query is tell me about Long Beach. It's making this query already providing and using this data in the previous query. It's basically carrying all of that information forward into my next query and into this query. So that's why when I said I want more factual data, you're now refining that to the thing, and you're providing that with every subsequent query. You're providing the accumulative conversation to the API. If that does that answer your question? Does that make sense?
Yeah. I had one follow-up question. So, just
Sure.
to take it one step further. So, suppose I'm making lots of calls with the same kind of persona. Like, suppose I'm a salesperson.
Mm-hmm.
I'm making a lot of sales calls. So, can we implement any kind of feedback mechanism into this so that all the questions are logged in? But if I use one particular answer from the sessions, then
Mm-hmm.
it tracks itself, and the next time it gives out more accurate answer.
So you actually so there's actually an example called advanced, which we did not cover. So if you look at the code for advanced, there's actually an example here, so you can edit your conversation. There's actually an interface to do that.
Edit as in, I didn't get you.
So like, because when you make an API call to Open API or ChatGPT, you're providing all of the previous context to ChatGPT for your next query, right? So in this library, I've created something to edit one of the responses or one of the questions that's happened in the past, so that you can kind of like course correct future queries that you might have.
Okay, got it.
If that makes sense, right?
Yeah, it makes sense. I had actually no follow-up question. Sorry
Sure.
for.
Oh, no. This is perfect. Go for it.
So, can we connect it to some kind of knowledge base on top of this feedback mechanism? So like it answers questions related to that knowledge base only, not gives out some in general answers.
So the answer to that is yes and no. So no. So yes, but you have to provide all of that information in your query, right? or you have to make that information publicly accessible somewhere. So you can actually, for ChatGPT, you can actually say, here is a link for this article, digest the article or this information, and then ask your question. So you can do weird things like that, but you have to provide all of that data to OpenAI or ChatGPT, right? So you can't ask it about unless that information is publicly available and consumed in their model, you can't ask it things that it kind of doesn't know about. You have to provide all of that information up front. But just remember, if you provide that information up front, as an example, if you use a knowledge base for your intranet, so in your company's proprietary thing, you have to assume that they're taking that information and using it down the line for other questions and stuff like that, if that makes sense.
Okay, got it.
Yeah, so you basically have to provide it, and that's kind of where you get in this weird legal sketchy kind of a thing. But because you are providing it, like you as an employee or you as an individual, you're freely giving that information to them. So technically it now becomes public property, is where I'm getting at it.
Got it. Got it.
Yeah.
Point.
Cool. Anything else? Any other questions?
That was pretty much it from my side.
Okay. Yep. If you haven't, anyone has any other questions, topics, or anything like that about this or anything else, yeah, hit me up in Slack. And yeah, no, I hope this was really cool and informative for everyone.
Yeah, it was definitely very helpful.
Cool. All right. Catch you at the next meeting then.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Bye.
Yep. Bye.